impassioned to bring back home. Thank you.
Thank you, Alfonso. That's very promising. Maybe we are getting back some light. I don't know, but we will also do without that. Actually, if you allow me that little joke, it's not mission accomplished. It's business unfinished. No, you could almost say. And that's really, strangely enough, also what happened to this presentation we are about to do now. Because yesterday, my computer, when I was about 2/3 through with this presentation, crashed, and it was not possible to find a workable computer who would let me finish this presentation. So it is interesting, business unfinished, like more or less the whole question we are debating today. I think that's a remarkable sign of coincidence. And anyway, you are now putting on my unfinished presentation. Is it possible? No, it's not. Okay, we start. Anyway, this is Kalliopi Chainoglou from Macedonia. Yes. And Anna Śledzińska-Simon from Wroclaw, who are the co-editors of this Wroclaw Commentaries, Culture and Human Rights project. And they will interrupt me or criticize or contradict me in all of what I'm going to say. And that is a bit the message we are trying to give as well. You know? It is not a commentary you are going to have. It is commentaries. And that title was deliberately chosen because of the many issues in the cultural domain and the media domain and all you were talking about, Alfonso, that are in one way or another also contradictory or could at least be debated from different angles. You know? And that is exactly also the problem what made it so difficult to actually reach instruments that are fully covering the whole area we are going to talk about. It all started with two conferences held by the city of Wroclaw, both in spring and autumn 2013, and the National Cultural Center in Warsaw, which actually debated the right to culture as a human right, with the aim actually of helping to bring about this additional protocol to the European Convention on Human Rights. And that is an old desire, especially in this country, and I can only congratulate the Poles that they keep up fighting for such a theme. What it may bring, as we could just hear, is open. Whether it really will lead to such oh no, come on. Whether it really will bring such a protocol is another story, and that remains to be seen. In the meantime, there are many, many open questions, you know, and somehow these questions and these links of culture with human rights need to be addressed, be it in everyday court cases, be it in other legal procedures, be it in political decisions, in new laws affecting culture, and in many other domains which are interesting for us. So we found that this preparatory phase the city of Wroclaw is going through as preparing for European Capital of Culture 2016 would be an ideal context to actually start a more thorough reflection on a handbook project, which we three are the editors, together with a number of scientific experts acting as scientific committee. Actually, the scientific committee is the body really shaping the scope, you know. We had intense discussion with all the members of this committee about certain areas we are going to talk a bit about later. And question is, of course, what do we mean by culture? If you have a title, Culture and Human Rights, you're going to interrupt me whenever you think I'm talking bullshit, yes? That's clear, okay. What means culture in the context of such a project? I mean, there is still a sort of policy standards that culture is that what governments and other actors focus on in their policy making, in their administration, and that's the arts and heritage mainly. That's one way of looking at it. And the wider, you could say, anthropological concept, this includes the needs of diverse sociocultural groups and forms of human expressions which are not really related only to that core definition. And in our view, both of these views on culture are important and need to be addressed. Yes, please, you have the mic, of course.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for the invitation, for the intervention as well. I have to add, because I feel that it's very important to emphasize the pluralist nature of this project. So, as you, Andreas, already mentioned, these are commentaries. So we do include 150 authors already and 150 entries. So with this group, it's impossible to have a uniform, homogeneous view on human rights and culture. So this is one point where we start. So this pluralist view means that we do not promote any political agenda ourselves. We consider it as a very important academic, scientific project that has to bring and start a discussion about, and this is important, the relationship between the human rights as an area of law and culture. And the view you can have is probably first to say that human rights, this is a culture of itself. So you could speak about culture of human rights. And then you can also speak about human right to culture or cultural human rights. So we want to bring out, we want to emphasize the human rights dimension in culture, but we also want to see the many elements that make the right to culture as a human right. Something that I want to emphasize probably at the beginning of this discussion that we'll have, and also we're very interesting to hear your feedback at this very early still, maybe not very, but still early stage of this project. There are cultural wars being led, and we all witness, various, I would say, evidences of these cultural wars in our daily life. And we have to understand that human rights is, as an area of law, is an area of war as such as well. And this is to understand that human rights are, a battlefield for various normative views being introduced. So this is the, interpretation that gives the content and gives the force to various, you could say, axiological and value preferences. So seeing that as an area of potential battle, cultural battle, we know that that various cultural views, on the other hand, serve as limitations of human rights. So this is what we are aware of, that culture is very often used as a limitation of human rights. On the other hand, human rights as such do promote culture and cultural diversity, and then we have this very broad entry on or a part of our project on access to culture that aims to enhance participation, equality, but not equality as a uniform standard, but equality in diversity. So this is an intervention I wanted to make at this point, because you just explained the concept as something that I want to emphasize as finishing this intervention, is that there is no political agenda. It's a project that opens up probably an important discussion that we are having now in Europe and in each of the member states of the European Union, but also broader in the Council of Europe, about the link between human rights and culture, culture in human rights and human rights in culture.
Well, thanks a lot for this explanation, which goes, of course, much deeper into what we are doing than I could do at this very moment. But let me just add that I'm very happy that out of this really great number of specialists from around the world, we have been able to gain as authors, co-authors of this whole project. There are at least, if I counted properly, 3, 4, 5, no, 8, actually 8 here in this room. So thanks to all of you for participating in this venture. No, the compendium was also a starting point for this to a certain extent, because we, as we heard yesterday from Vesna, who is also an author of this project, there are still some shortcomings in this legal chapters of the compendium, which in a partnership with this new initiative may be better solved than alone in one instrument like the compendium. So that already shows you that there are links to other projects that are running, and we will continue that also with a special website which may be helpful in forging that cooperation between for example, the compendium and
Can I just
this project.
Stop you there and give another dimension of the project that Anna didn't mention it for some reason, probably to give me the floor. Thank you so much. So in certain countries, we have seen that culture is not defined. It is mentioned in legislation. We know that there are the provisions, but we don't know who can enforce or against whom this can be enforced. So this is a project that gives the opportunity to certain groups or certain individuals to claim their rights, because we recognize that there are cultural dimensions to human rights. And this is a very important exercise also for the Council of Europe and other international organizations to notice and perhaps to follow up with another project on it. And the other issue is that we have, well, it's not only that we have 150 authors, but we have cross-cutting issues that are being right now under research or should be researched, and they are not. And we are following all these new developments through our keywords that we have selected for our project, and which reflect all these various, and believe me, you cannot imagine how many dimensions, cultural dimensions there can be to human rights. And yesterday I was mentioning, for example, the copyright issue with disabilities. So it's not only the European Convention on Human Rights we have in Europe. You know, there are so many other international legal instruments that have been adopted by states, and we don't know how they are enforced. And to give you an example, there was this Marrakesh Treaty on the right of copyright for the blind people. You know, for that very specific issue. If we don't have this normative context with the commentaries, if we don't have a set of guidelines, or at least a set of expressions of how these cultural dimensions of human rights should be analyzed or could be interpreted, we're never going to see these international legal instruments being properly enforced at the national level. Thanks so much.
Yes. Okay. That's what you just said. Other international. In fact, there are some conventions, some international conventions, not only the one mentioned here, but also one you are dealing with in one of your articles, the International Convention of the Child. You know?
Oh, the child.
Yes, that they have extremely explicit propositions how this right to access of culture and to cultural participation should look like. You know, so there are some conventions who are very specific, and that needs to be highlighted, and others are not, or others are where this is all totally absent. So. What we can already see, that it's not a uniform body of law that is available for this question we are dealing with, but we have to deal with many different instruments.
And again, it's the question: which children, what group of children can claim this right, this access to culture? I mean, we have vulnerable groups, we have Roma children, we have refugee children. Can we have these enforceable rights before national courts? Can we have amendments to legislation? What can we do? And this is a monitoring exercise as well.
Yeah. Maybe one should say that each of these articles in the handbook that will come is made up of first a definition, then an assessment of the instruments available, of potential instruments available, if there are any, to address, for example, this Roma issue or the child issue, and then cases that have been fought for at the European Court or at other international bodies. So there are a number of bodies which will be introduced, as well as literature that has been published will be assessed in these articles. And finally, and that's why I'm saying it, it also has a final conclusions part, each of these keywords, where people can actually do exactly what you just said, make propositions to what should be changed, what could be changed, what could be modified, how could this be brought into, for example, the policy area, and what is necessary to do exactly that. Okay, we are going further, and don't forget, it is only a rudimentary presentation. Why is this topic important? Well, what we are trying to do here hasn't been done so far. And that's a challenge, of course. And it falls into an area which Janusz Simonides, one of the eminent Polish scholars who stood with us at the start of this whole initiative, he said it is neglected or underestimated, the whole field, in the legal professions. You may protest again, but it is, in fact, in many of those commentaries, this plays a rather superficial role. You know? That is what I read so far as a non-initiated. And therefore, since this guide is missing, I think we should do it. And finally, some of these keywords and some of the issues we take up are highly relevant as regards policymaking and multi-stakeholder governance standards, like the ones defended by the Council of Europe. And now the proposition there should have been a nice picture of an empty library where the shelves have been emptied. You could also mention film production that ceased because of tax laws that were changed, or you may have other examples where actually the access is in danger, you know? And that is one of these hot issues. Another hot issue is freedom versus respect. I mean, that is a debate you have quite frequently in the media nowadays on the so-called parallel societies in our countries. Is there a right for a different sort of set of fundamental rights if you are belonging to a different group? Alfonso has actually touched on that, and we will deal with this issue. This is really hot, of course. Yeah.
I have probably an information about our internal reactions and debate, and we could say that this was even a conflict between us, because we represent with Kalliopi the legal field, and Andreas is known from his policy orientation and political science approach. So we finally decided that this is a legal commentary. So this is the focus, and this is the framework of the entire project. So we do not have the policy approach as a main goal. However, we ask all the legal lawyers who are the authors in this project to include the policy recommendation at the point where they find the controversy they present, because usually each of the keywords we included has a controversy behind it. So we ask each of the author to give a guideline, or at least present arguments for and against a particular policy choice. So this is not a policy choice, a policy document or documentaries. However, this could also be useful, and one of the working, you could say, working name we had was a handbook. So it could be used as a handbook also for policymakers, especially that it's thought as a cross-referencing type of document. So bringing you from various entries through the whole volume that would be probably 500 pages long.
We have to clarify, and I'm only explaining this to non-legal persons here, to the non-legal audience, that in litigation, when we are preparing the court papers, we make in the main text we make reference to key interpretative guides, and this is the purpose of Wroclaw Commentaries, to serve as a reference point in strategic litigation before national courts or the European Court of Human Rights. So this is something that the lawyers will be using in their analysis when they submit the papers before the courts.
And also that it's very concise. So one of the other working name was the concise dictionary or concise commentaries. It's not our purpose to explore the area in all dimensions. However, to give concise information to those who look for reference and also for guidance.
Maybe you could give an example of one or two keywords that may be enlightening for the audience.
So we have areas that we try to focus, and these areas are, again, divided into various smaller areas. Some of them are longer, so we divided the areas into longer entries, shorter entries, or brief references. For some authors, this is enough to give a brief reference. For example, what is the Islamic headscarf? However, we don't want to focus just on the Islamic religion as such, so we have also the cartoon section or the blasphemy section. Circumcision. So this cultural elements of various cultural expressions, but also rights of authors, access to media, vulnerable groups, participation, whatnot, artists as such, right to science and culture, obscenity, freedom of reply, right to reply, freedom of press, and. So yeah. 150 is still work in process.
And internet access, which is a hot issue right now. For
yeah. There's a number of keywords relating directly to the newest media, including such things as whistleblower. It's one of our keywords, And you have a whistleblower. And you really have an international renowned expert, a professor from England, who is dealing with that little keyword. So that's a great success that we are so in the middle of the whole debate. We're quite proud of that, I would say. Another hot issue is diversity of groups. That is in almost all political declaration, of course, the diversity is very high, the question is, of course, how diverse can the values be? What about these common values? They're always coming up, But there can also be diverse values to a certain extent, Now, this to find out the balance between what can be diverse and what should be common or universal is I think, a very crucial element of this book. I hope I'm right. You see, I'm a bit careful with these people because I always say when I'm trying to argue, and they say, well, that is not a legal term you're using. So I get something on my back. And so I always have to sort of take insurance that I'm not talking.
And what we also include is the institutional part. So not only the material, the substantive type of analysis of rights, of various dimensions of rights that have cultural relevance. We also include a whole section on institutions and see their role in promoting culture and the various documents that are also relevant. So this is or instruments that are relevant for human rights for rights to be implemented. So again, this is not a document or not a commentary that shows elements of cultural relativism. It's not dealing with diversity in implementation. It's rather trying to bring up the standard or bring certain issues as potential content of human rights that are already established, but this is just the way whether they are included in the interpretation of the existing rights as being covered and protected.
There's next one you have here up here is an issue we're still debating. Yesterday I had a fight with Kalliopi about that, you know, because of course...
You know, it's a good project when you fight with Andreas. I think most of you would know that by now.
The question is, of course, there are, for example, heritage conventions, not just to take that example. And what I learned from the Faro Convention you mentioned earlier, Alfonso, is of course that also heritage protection has a dynamic aspect to it, or can have, or you could even say should have, you know. And that in that way, the way we are looking at heritage or what we incorporate as heritage is of a dynamic nature. That's what I'm trying to say with this hot issue here. And I think we agree basically on that, wouldn't we?
But we also include, let's say, urban planning. And we don't have a keyword on ghettoization. Probably.
Not yet.
This is something that we want to also see, not only the heritage of the landscape, but also planning and the way people interact and the management and people interact.
Yes, but we have a keyword on landscape. That will also be, you will be happy to know. Of course. And finally, case law and legal instruments are complex and partly conflicting. Yes.
It's not that they are conflicting as such, it's just that we notice this fragmentation of the legal order, of international legal order. You get some case law in the form of complaints and decisions from UN committees that are dealing with specific human rights. So I'm giving you, for example, the CEDAW committee, or any new complaints and decisions we will be receiving from the UN Committee of the Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights. And then you get other kind of decisions, judgments from the European Court of Human Rights or the European Committee of Social Rights and so on. So you notice that there is a certain distance between what they are arguing about and their interpretation. And we want this also to be reflected in our commentaries. And hopefully, I don't know, or perhaps our authors will be quite courageous to pinpoint, to say where the UN committee made a mistake or actually made an omission, or
what could be changed,
or what
in a
could
new
be
process.
changed, and
yeah,
perhaps
exactly.
at the European level, what we could argue for, what we would like to see from now on.
Okay, so maybe with that, what is being done within the commentaries would also help you in further developing these issues. And that's why we are very happy to have the Deputy Secretary General of the Council of Europe as one of the patrons of this initiative. And she will be also featured very soon on our website, which we have at culture-rights.net. So you could go there and you will already find now basic information which will gradually be enhanced. And in that sense, it can have then a partnership with the compendium, because certain things we cannot deal with at length in the compendium could also be dealt with much more in detail on this new website.
So this is a work in progress now, but we also reflect in a way the state of art as it is now in the law and probably in the legal or public discussions. However, the website will create the opportunity that this discussion is led further up, that there is a comment from probably also the reviewers or those who are our target groups and probably would use the commentary, whether there is any omission or any new development. So this is meant to give also the forum and the floor for various people to interact, and for that reason, the website.
Yes, we could have easily reached already 200 keywords. Actually, we are cutting down some now at the moment, trying to bring them together again. But on the website, of course, there's room to open that field again, you know, if need be. And if some new developments come up, we can actually react to that on the website much better than we could in the book, you know. I'm sorry? Yes, I could have done that if this thing was ready, but it is not, as you can see. Culture minus rights. It's not difficult to net. Yeah, it's not difficult to remember. But we will also have a different address for it very soon, and that's Wroclaw Commentaries. So simply that, like that, you know, because that's what the thing is being known already now as the Wroclaw Commentaries, and therefore we will also use that name as well, so people will have an easy access to it. Yeah, that's basically what we can do. Maybe we should actually, the book launch will be next year in the context of European Capital of Culture of Wroclaw 2016. It will be on the 14th of November. So if you have time, then you're most happy. We are most happy to have you at this big launch. Maybe we should also mention, of course, that all of this wouldn't be possible without the support of both the city of Wroclaw and the National Center for Culture, which both of them are involved, because it will not only be an English publication that's being launched in November next year, it will also be a Polish one, and there may be other translations. We have taken care of that. We have gained the support of an internationally renowned publisher, De Gruyter, which is one of the leading scientific publishers, so it also gets the proper distribution worldwide. So this is all on a good way, I would say, and one can look forward to an interesting adventure. What we should maybe do also is, maybe you could do that, tell who is the scientific committee, because
yes, of course. As we said, we have divided the work of these commentaries, the actual content, under specific groups. So there are up to 8 groups now. To give an example, the name of the first group is the Access to Culture, Media, Information and Participation. So we have 8 sections in total, and each section is led and is supervised by a professor or a legal expert, let's put it, or anyway, let's put it, an ex-officer, former officer, somebody who has experience in international organization, lengthy experience, and can understand what the authors are submitting and what they're writing about. So we start with Professor Yvonne Donders, who was here till yesterday, but she had to leave to go to Copenhagen, and she's leading the group on cultural diversity. We have Professor Federico Lezzerini, and we also have Professor Janet Blake, and we're really happy to have Professor Janet Blake because she's a professor at the University of Tehran, and this is again something good, I think, for the commentaries, that we have people outside Europe being involved in this project, and this is guaranteeing the diversity of the project and the integrity of the project itself. We have
There are both gender and national quotas in this project implement.
That's true. We have Dr. Andrzej Jakubowski, and
from the Polish Academy of Science. Yeah.
That's right. Who am I forgetting?
The Anna-Marie Laxon, and she's sitting here.
I'm
yeah?
so sorry. You're sitting to that.
Freedom of expression. And
freedom of expression and and media rights and yeah. The lengthiest section in the commentaries is led by Anne-Marie, and we really thank you for your contribution and your time.
We also have the United Nations Rapporteur on Religious Freedom, Heiner Bielefeld, as one of the scientific leaders. So,
and there is a letter as well endorsing the project, or not?
What?
Is there a letter endorsing the project?
No, he is part of the scientific committee.
I thought we got an endorsement letter as well, or not?
An endorsement of what?
The project. The support. No, we didn't?
Well, he's member of the scientific. What more endorsement do you want? Now, we may have a couple of more patrons which are interesting. There are already a number, as I said, the city of Wroclaw and the National Center of Culture, the chiefs, both are part of this, but also former ministers, Council of Europe. There's famous artists working in different fields, like Weibel, for example, from Austria, who is in the new media arts. So it has a number of patrons who really represent important institutions or activities that help us actually to both conduct and promote the project. Well, that's about it. So I can now switch the unfinished business to the end of this. The end is that. That's finished. Thank you very much for your attention. If you have any questions, please go ahead.
Thank you, Andreas, and all of you. What is the sort of idea behind this? Because we had Fribourg Group in Switzerland, and they have an institute for cultural rights, and they have been working. We had at the Council of Europe many meetings in the 1990s when we tried to get cultural rights into the European Convention. Now we have a new initiative because that one has obviously failed, because we still don't have an article. But how much are you working together with them?
He's one of the authors.
Okay. But what was the sort of interest in Poland to start this project?
The interest, as I said at the beginning, was to actually get this article, you know. And then we all realized in discussing it, for example, with the mayor, in discussing this, we realized that an article, whatever, how good it may be, it would still only be an article covering sort of a more general approach, you know. It cannot be as detailed as the cases are we are facing, you know. Because if you talk about, let's say, I mentioned earlier the issue of hijab or whistleblower, you know. I mean, of course, no convention article could really cover all that in detail. And we thought it is better to actually be more specific, because that's where the cases happen. That's where the issues are. That's where the conflicts come. And therefore, we convinced the mayor, and the mayor was very supportive, I must say, Mayor of Wroclaw, to that idea. We convinced him that whatever the fate of this article or this new addition to the European Convention may be, this other thing is also needed, because it creates sort of a binding element between these specific cases through its diversity and at the same time through its coherence in one set of commentaries.
Can I just step in? It's not a declaration. It's nothing that has been produced by a group of experts. It's nothing of that sort. It has much more to it. It's a proper tool. It will be a tool. It will be a tool for legal practitioners, for human rights advocates. And actually, let me tell you here how I got involved with Compendium. I applied for the post of there was an advertisement, let's put it that way, for an expert, national expert, and I personally was involved with human rights advocacy for artists and other groups that are denied access to culture in my country. So that was my background, you know. I have seen it, how it happens, you know, having people coming to you, telling you, is there anywhere we can go? Can we enforce our rights? Do we have rights? Are there legal provisions that can be enforced? So this is a tool for legal practitioners. It's a tool for NGOs. It kind of complements, you know, these information awareness campaigns and, you know, dissemination projects on human rights, cultural policies as well. So it is a tool that can be used by many people, many entities.
But it can also show them the limits, you know, what they can expect, you know, if they want to go, for example, to court, you know, what's the state of current case law in this area or in this issue, you know? That's also important to know for them. You know?
It's not that we are all happy with the current implementation or current coverage of human rights in international documents. It's not that we are happy with that. We see, gaps. We see sometimes overlaps that produce contradictory outcomes, as Kalliopi mentioned. Sometimes, various treaty bodies produce a bit different approach to the same issue. So we are aware of that. It's not a document that would, give you a list of human rights that are to be covered. It is a document that shows you the perspective, because sometimes probably, an issue that we discussed 2 days before, trade, the access or right to trade unions of artists. Well, if you want to look for a guidance in the existing human rights, hard type of documents, you will not find. But, talking about it, bringing it as an issue within the human rights and culture discussion inspires those who would probably, by very evolutionary type of interpretation show that, this right shall be protected to this extent, or probably, there should be measures taken to guarantee certain professions to have a right to associate. So there are many examples of that. Or showing that genital mutilation is, type of practice that is probably blessed by certain cultures, but contradictory to human rights, to integrity and self-determination. And it has very important political dimension when it comes to refugee law, asylum law, and European Union responses.
And national law.
National responses to what do we do with this cultural practice? Shall we protect? Shall we allow it? Shall we supervise it? So there is many of that. So this is not a list of human rights to culture that we want to cover. It's not even the mirror of rights that are covered. It's something more. That it's probably hard to define, but as this will emerge, I hope this will be helpful, this will be useful, this will be a point of reference or a source of reference, and this will have a follow-up in discussion in probably further policy-making choices that we hope to take place in many member states. We didn't change it. I mean, this is not it's not our agenda. We are on separate, you could say, track. That it's not, it doesn't exclude the possibility of having the protocol. It's something that, it's not related. It's just in the same framework of the European Capital of Culture.
Okay.
This is how I see it. Am I right?
Any more questions? Because we have sort of reached our time limit. You see us quite confident and happy in a way, and that has not to do that we will not be overwhelmed with work in the next month. That's pretty clear. But this overwhelming response from so many scholars from around the world who wanted and are willing to participate, that really makes me proud and happy, I must say. So when talking about that project, I always tend to smile to a certain extent. I'm sorry. Okay. Any other issue? Any other questions to it? No, I don't see any. So thanks a lot. And we have now, I think, the lunch. Yeah? Is it correct? Yes. Thank you.